Hi, welcome to the Fancy Comma YouTube. Today I'm joined by Alexis Katsis. Alexis Katsis is a public health professional and the founder of Lux SciPod, a podcast with herself and another PhD level scientist that talks about the science of luxury items such as jewelry, handbags, fashion, and more. Alexis earned her PhD in microbiology and immunology from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. She has worked at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center. Find Alexis on the web at arevnamedia.com. Welcome, Alexis.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
It's amazing because we were in graduate school and around the same time in Washington. We're both kind of fashionistas. I am a fashionista at heart, and part of the name Fancy Comma that I came up with that we have for our company is because I'm a very fancy person and I do really like luxury items and luxury fashion and being stylish. Really interesting. Like I wonder if there's something about mid 2010s Washington that was just a breeding ground for fashionistas.
I think that there is a pull in general for things that feel exclusive and things that feel fancy. I think both of those things are there's a natural pull in humanity towards those. And I've read a few things. Eventually, we'll do an episode on the science, the psychology behind why we like fancy things and luxury, and that extends into art. Our previous season was all about art. So the science behind paint colors and clay and metals, and there is psychology around why humans respond to art too. So I think there's just something about it. Early 2010s DC was its own singular experience.
Oh
and
yeah, it was quite an experience. Like,
yeah.
let me tell you, like, my only fun besides going to the lab and secretly doing a think tank internship was like on the weekends. In the mornings, I would go to Georgetown Cupcake and get my free cupcake, and then I'd walk around and shop in Georgetown, like going to H&M and that whole area has evolved because back in the day there was like a Victoria's Secret there and I forget the other stores, but they're that shopping center. There's a shopping center on M Street, and it's like a huge shopping center. And
Mm-hmm.
now it has an H&M. Back in the day, it was actually didn't have a lot of shops. And there was an American Eagle was there in 2008 or 2009. And I spent so much
Yeah.
time just walking up Wisconsin and M Street, and because I went to Georgetown right by there, and actually did go to George Washington to go to Trader Joe's because that was the closest Trader Joe's. So,
Yes. Yes, that is the one with the line that usually had to wait in. And I think, well,
oh yeah,
the big question in DC is which Safeway you shopped at, right? Were you at the social
oh
Safeway
yes,
or what was the other one? There was the sketchy Safeway or the
I
Soviet.
shopped at two of them. What was the one? So there was two. There was one right by Georgetown that was really it was run down. It got a makeover. Suddenly it became like the best Safeway, and I used
Yeah.
to go there and just spend time wandering around. And then there was another Safeway when I lived in. It's like kind of so it's like right next to Georgetown. I can't remember the name of it right now.
Mm.
But it was like there was a Safeway there, and it was like really, really small Safeway, and it barely had anything. And I don't know if that was the Soviet
That was the
Safeway.
Soviet way. Yeah, that was because it was kind of this joke that was like a, Soviet era without anything on the shelves. And then the social
It
Safeway, I
didn't
think, was
have a
the one
lot.
in Georgetown where like people would get dressed up and like try to pick up dates and stuff at the Safeway.
It was a really nice Safeway, like,
So nice.
and Safeway had really good coupons back then, and I did a lot of like grad school
Oh,
shopping there.
yeah, I remember broke grad school shopping. It was always in exercise and invention.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, because I also did a lot of right after grad school. I was still living in Washington, and I was running and I was writing and just actually trying to get back into grad school. So I was studying for the GRE. I was
Mm.
training for the Marine Corps. I ran the Chicago Marathon, then I ran the Marine Corps
Oh,
Marathon.
wow.
DC is a great place for running, but I remember all I
Yes.
would do is like shop or like window shop because I didn't have money
Yeah.
anymore after I left grad school. But while I was in grad school, on the weekends, I went shopping. I'd find stuff and then I'd sell it on eBay and use my digital marketing skills that I didn't know that was digital marketing yet. But like, um, there's a lot of really good finds. I found a lot of really nice stuff there, and like I pride myself in like going to malls and like taking forever and like picking out something that I can just wear forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's becoming, I think, hopefully more in fashion, right? We've had this whole fast fashion movement with H&M and stores like that that produce fashion quickly and cheaply. And I'm hoping that we're moving more towards a more sustainable model where you buy a few nice pieces and they last you forever and they're classic and you can just incorporate them into your wardrobe that way. Um, and I think one of the other trends that I'm really liking right now is the comfortable fashion trend. They call it the technical term is quiet luxury, right? So it's things that don't have a lot of branding and are more subdued and are more classic in their sort of feel. And I think that's nice too, because then, for those of us who've been working at home for the past 3 years or however long, right, we don't want to necessarily like dress up to sit in our guest bedroom all day, right? So I really loving this trend towards clothes that are sort of multi-purpose and a little bit more casual, but also look nice. But you don't feel like, I have a closet full of blazers from when I used to go into the office. I was like, I don't know that I'm ever going to wear these again.
I actually can relate because I had an internship in the house, and so I moved back to Oklahoma. I And then I applied. I was like, I miss Washington so much. It was like around 2016, 2017. I got an internship with the House of Representatives, and so I didn't have money that much, and so I went to build up my wardrobe, and so I went to Ann Taylor and Forever 21 and Express, and I had gift
Mm-hmm.
cards that I got from doing surveys. So
Yeah.
I went and bought like Portofino shirts, and I had like 4 shirts, and I wore them. And then I did my internship. Then I got another internship in the cloakroom in the house, the actual house chamber, and I bought like $600 worth of Ann Taylor clothes, and I actually quit my internship. So now I have $600 of Ann Taylor clothes, and I only work in yoga pants now because I haven't really had an in-person job since 2017 when I last worked in the house. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with those clothes. Like I sometimes worry about like how much clothing I have and like should I have this much clothing? Like, because in my mind, like every item of clothing that I buy has like a specific purpose. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you do need like a lot of people, they have like a capsule wardrobe, but I personally don't think I can do a capsule wardrobe because I like variety and I get tired of things. And
Yeah.
sometimes you really need like a specific item that will both perform, look nice, and also be comfortable and
Mm-hmm.
also just give a certain vibe. And I have so many different situations in life, personal, professional, unexpected life
Yeah.
situations. I feel like I really need a lot of clothes. So that's my, maybe I'm just talking myself into like hoarding clothes, but I now have all this Ann Taylor it's in storage right now. At some point, I'm going to get out my Ann Taylor clothes and be like, wow, why did I ever buy these? But they're really stylish. Like they were truly,
Yeah.
I really went the extra mile to pick like really stylish outfits for
Mm-hmm.
an internship that never fully came to fruition.
Yeah, I used to feel that way too. And I still have a fair amount of clothes. I have by no means in the capsule collection club. We did a year abroad as a family, and you can't. We weren't really moving, so I couldn't take all of my clothes, and certainly not all of my shoes. I'm a sucker for a good pair of shoes. Um, and so I had to pare it all down. And so I spent 10 months with essentially a capsule wardrobe. And I was like, it changed my perspective a little bit. Now it's more about like looking at, have I worn this piece? You know, and if I haven't worn it in a while, then I'm probably not going to wear it again. Right. Like the old me was like, oh, I should save it just in case. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, no, if you haven't worn it in a couple of years, then you're probably not going to wear it. And so it's a more of I wouldn't say like a capsule collection, but kind of more of an intentionality around the wardrobe and how you build it, and even about what pieces you acquire. I'm really loving. There's some great sustainable brands. I'm wearing one right now. It's made out of fishing nets. Um, just so thinking about like where the clothes come from, trying to buy from more small local designers. I did that when we were in Greece. So it's just kind of thinking about it. Or denim. Like my new thing is I am not going to buy a new pair of denim jeans. Denim is really, really, really bad for the environment. And so when we were abroad and I needed some jeans, I found this great secondhand store for jeans. And so I bought a secondhand pair of jeans, and it's fantastic. They fit, they're comfy, they look great. They were not expensive because that's the other thing, right? Like how much do you want to spend on the wardrobe too? So
At the intersection of Washington, D.C. and style, there's a woman named Abra Belki. She also goes by Belle. She actually used to be working in, I think, in the Senate, and then she went to law school, and now she lives in Montana. And she has a blog called Capitol Hill Style. Have you heard of Capitol Hill Style? It's a really good blog for working women in Washington and sort of like business people. A lot of lawyers read it. A lot of people that work in Congress.
Oh, cool. I will definitely
It's a
check it
great
out.
blog.
Yeah.
It's actually down right now, but so it's a blog. It's been existing for what year is it? 2023. So it's been almost 10 or more years, and
Wow.
I it provides it. So I don't know how what the dress code is where you've worked, but in Congress the dress code was very strict. Like
Mm.
women on the how is it? I don't remember if it's the House or Senate floor, possibly both. You have to cover your arms when you go to the House or Senate floor. And
Yeah.
recently, Tammy Duckworth, who had a baby, she brought her baby to the I think Senate floor because she's in the Senate, and she actually made her baby adhere to the dress code. Apparently, according to the screenshotted tweet I saw of Senator Duckworth. So it's really tricky and it's very male dominated, just like science, actually. It's so male. And you've worked in the government sphere, so you know that
Yes.
government people dress really boringly and
Oh, yeah. So many dark colored suits.
a lot of dark color suits. I made an effort to wear navy suits in Congress because I was tired of dark black suits. And I saw this lady on the Bethesda Metro, I think. I don't remember which metro station it was, but she was walking up this escalator, and she had the best, most stylish, like navy fitted suit. And I should have asked her, like, where did you get that? And I
Yeah.
went on the search to find that exact suit, and I couldn't find it. And I also saw the most beautiful cobalt blue peplum when I was in line to get my
Mm.
ID in the house. So
Yeah.
Congress was a great place to get some fashion ideas. Not so much
Yes.
like my science lab, but I have seen some women scientists that are really stylish. I don't know if I should like name them, but there are a lot of really stylish women scientists out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. Congress just changed the dress code to make it a little bit more casual. That was a
That's
huge
wonderful.
piece of news this week. Um, and of course, everyone's, there's certain people who are like, well, it's the downfall of civilization because we changed the dress code. But so that happened. And I will say, I was one of those people that was in the lab in heels. I mean, closed toed heels, because you had to have closed toed
Yeah.
shoes in the lab. You don't want open toed shoes in the lab. Bad idea. But yeah, my thought was always that it didn't have to be mutually exclusive. There are definitely reasons when you're doing lab work that you tend to not dress up as much. And some of those reasons have to be that you're working with chemicals or things that if they spill on you, spill on your nice clothes would be disastrous. I ruined a pair of jeans in a lab by spilling nitric acid on myself. That was not fun. Um, but
So I have to ask you, when you spilled nitric, first of all, that kind of my I have worked with a lot of stuff in lab. Never nitric acid. I did work with like diphtheria once. That was
that's not fun.
scary.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
did it actually burn through your clothes? Because have you sat through those like really scary training sessions with
Yeah.
like little Timmy wanted to play with hydrochloric acid and
Yes.
then he poured it on himself and
Yeah.
then his arm no longer existed and it's just like especially working in MRI technology, it's literally like
Mm.
our trainings are like horror stories of like things that went horribly wrong. But
Yeah.
did it actually burn through your jeans? I'm just curious. Or how you're okay right now from,
Oh
because
no.
nitric
Oh yeah.
acid is a
Yeah.
very strong acid.
Yeah, fortunately, it wasn't that much of it. It was in college. I had this job at an environmental lab, and part of it was extracting like metals and kerosene and stuff out of soil samples to see how contaminated they were. And part of that process involved nitric acid. And I finished up in the lab. I always have my lab coat on. I'm very safe in the lab. And I don't know exactly how it happened. I was on my way home and my leg started itching and I looked down and there was these yellow dots. So it didn't eat through the jeans. It was actually good that I had jeans on since it's a tougher material. Um, but it did discolor them. And then when I got back to my dorm room and because the first thing you're supposed to do is douse everything in water, right? When you have a spill. And so I just jumped into the shower and my skin immediately blistered. But that was the extent of it. Like it healed fine. There was I was pretty fortunate that it wasn't concentrated and that I didn't actually spill that much on me and that I had a sufficient protective barrier.
Yeah, that's really lucky. I've actually never had anything like that happen. I've heard some horror stories, but I mean that's why you have to work. I didn't wear closed toed. I actually until like last year or like a few weeks ago, I like didn't wear open toed shoes. I just recently started wearing open toed shoes again. I don't know why, because like when you've been in research for a long time, because it makes sense. Like I don't want to spill stuff on myself.
Mm-mm.
Maybe I'll get a job again where I have to work in a lab. But then I realized, you know what? I don't want to work somewhere where I have to wear closed toed shoes all the time. So I'll just
Yeah.
have to deal. I mean, I do wear closed toed. I volunteer at a hospital now, and I wear closed toed shoes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Anytime you're in that type of
the,
environment, it's just smarter to protect
it's like
protect
the
yourself.
whole thing. Like I, one of the reasons I didn't do lab bench work was because I didn't like the fact that you have to plan your whole life around just not eating in the lab and being around all these weird chemicals. And I did
Mhm.
do it for in undergrad. I worked in a cancer lab. I worked in a chemistry lab. I but it's like you can never eat as an MRI researcher. You just sit at the computer all day. You can eat whenever. You can't do much when you're in the MRI scanning people, but
Right.
I find science, the laws of physics and science, really restrictive, and I guess that's why I
Yeah.
now work from home and I do writing, and that's not no restrictions. You can do anything.
It is. I mean, there is a people who do research are very committed because it is not an easy thing to do, and it does. Like I remember one of the challenges of being a graduate student in DC was dating as a graduate student in DC and trying to explain to potential dates that I couldn't go out that night because I had to feed my cells. And they're like, can't you feed them tomorrow? I'm like, no, actually I can't, because by tomorrow they're going to have doubled again in the amount of cells that are in there, and then they're going to be too crowded, and then they're going to start sending out distress signals, and that'll change the whole experiment, right? So there is that commitment, right? You can't eat or drink in the lab. You can't necessarily set your own schedule. I mean, you sort of can. You can decide when you want to start the experiment, but then the experiment just goes. And if you have an 8 hour time point or a 12 hour time point, or what, like, you just have to be there. If that's 2 in the morning, that's 2 in the morning. If it's 10 at night, it's 10 at night. Like, you know, so yeah, there's that big level of commitment. I knew going into my PhD that I didn't want to stay in the research lab. So I, like you did, I did an internship with a science policy organization. Really, just thought I was going to end up in science policy, and then, life takes you down weird directions. But yeah, I knew going into my PhD that being on like an academic track or being in industry as a bench researcher wasn't what I was going to do afterwards. And I luckily had a very supportive advisor, because I don't know that a lot of PhD advisors would have been comfortable with that, but he was very comfortable, very supportive, allowed me to do things like the science policy work that were outside of my research. So,
You are into fashion and luxury, and I'm also into fashion and to some extent luxury. Aspirationally, I'm very into luxury. In reality, I don't really afford a lot of luxury, but I try to live simplistically, and I do follow blogs like Extra Petite, where the it's run by Jean Wang. She's an Asian mom. She used to just be an Asian lady living in Boston doing accounting, and then and because I'm a petite person and she's also
mm,
petite. In what way? And like I've noticed the policy. So in science, Marie Curie had a famous quote, and she said, "If you want to give me a dress that is brown and sort of plain, basically, so I can wear it to the lab every day." But in the
mm,
policy world and outside of science, people are more concerned with fashion, and I think part of it is like when I in at Georgetown, people would wear their like disco party clothes to the lab, and sometimes the reason was they'd go clubbing after lab, but like uh, other places like there's not as much of an emphasis on fashion, and I wonder
mm,
if in interfacing in the policy world, because I got to dress up, I had a chance to kind of express myself more and like try to not fit into the like boxy suit stereotype and create my
mm,
own more fitted style. But it wasn't, once I did that, I kind of felt like I was sort of moving away from the science world because in my science programs, women don't dress that stylishly. So I'm wondering, did you find that to be true in your experience, or is George Washington different? I mean, Georgetown, the aesthetic is much different than like
mm,
MIT, which is where I did my
mm.
undergrad. At MIT, a lot of people are we're ideas people at MIT, so something like style. sometimes when you wear something stylish, like I was talking to someone and they were like, people will come up to you and like criticize your style at conferences and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really weird. And I wonder to what extent you developed your fashion sense independent is luxury. Did you always have a love of luxury, or was it something related to science, or where did you get your love of luxury and fancy items or high end style?
Yeah, so the fashion and the style was really from my mom. I think she was of the era where you didn't go out unless your makeup was done, and all of that things. And she's always liked, and even now she just texted me a few minutes, like an hour ago, with a pair of shoes. She's like, "Do you like these? Are these, I got these new shoes." Um, and she also is a person that appreciates quality. So and so that's really where kind of the luxury came in. And yes, I have part of the reason I started this podcast is because there is subliminal and some not so subliminal messaging that science is separate from fashion or art or anything quote unquote frivolous. And I think fashion being the more frivolous of the two in some people's minds. And so I felt growing up that I had to keep these two aspects of me separate, right? The aspect of me that was like this nerdy little girl that loved anything science, and the other aspect of me is sort of a creative person who loved writing and loved fashion and clothes and pretty things. And I decided, I think, at some point that trying to split yourself in two doesn't really work very well. And so I wore heels in the lab. I always made sure that I looked like I was presenting when I was presenting at a conference. I didn't really care how other people looked, but I was going to have a blazer, sometimes a skirt, sometimes pairs of heels. And I know that that meant that people didn't take me as seriously. And that's fine. I don't really mind how people perceive me because I know how smart I am or how not smart I am in any given situation. I know the value that I bring. And this has taken a long time, but I now know the value that I bring. And so if you want to underestimate me, that's at your own peril and really has nothing to do with me. Right. So, um, and I do think there's been a change. I think that the sort of generations below me, I won't speak for you because I don't know how generations below me, have a bit more open mind to not being so puritanical about how you should or shouldn't look or should or shouldn't present yourself. Because for me, it was absolutely appalling to go to a conference and see people up on stage presenting in like jeans and a ripped t-shirt. I was like, how do I take you seriously? Right? But I had to confront my own bias around that. And I was hoping that me showing up in a different way would help people sort of think about their own biases. Because when you hear me speak, right, I clearly know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to stand up in front of people unless I feel like I know what I'm talking about. And so, I got some really dumb questions because because again, I think people underestimated me based on how I looked. And it's like, that's fine if you want to do that. But again, that's at your peril because you're just going to end up looking like an idiot for asking me that question.
One of the most iconic outfits I ever saw in science was Anne Graybiel, who's an MIT professor. She gave us keynote speech in a gold suit, and it was so stylish. I thought her suit was so iconic, and I remember being like, I really want to be like Anne Graybiel and wear a gold suit and be such a baddie. But it's rare because I've noticed this is crazy, but when I wear my hair curly, I swear people think I'm stupid. So I stopped wearing my hair curly, and I was like, I want to I have curly hair.
Yeah.
But like, it's like, and then so I never wore my hair curly like in conferences. I always straightened my hair. Now I kind of, now that I'm freelancing, I kind of do my own thing. I don't feel the need to, firstly, like in science, as much as we want to believe that the facts are what's dictating our intellectual pursuits, a lot of times there's a lot of sexism. I
Oh yeah.
mean, we've all experienced it. I see
Mm-hmm.
people experiencing it all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
those little things like how you wear your hair every day, they make a huge. They if I well for me, if I can't wear my hair a certain way, I probably don't want to work there. If I can't live my do my if I can't eat a snack whenever I'm hungry, as I did when I was could not do when I was working at the bench, then not a long term job for me. So I think that like sometimes I would also see people at conferences wearing like the most elaborate neatest, best outfits ever, but it just, for me, it was just like standard button down, my boring pants, like maybe some comfortable shoes. Did I want to dress up more? Yeah, a little. But I didn't want to get male attention, or even worse, the guy that comes up to your poster and just completely grills you for like no apparent reason. And then like my
See, I have a different
supervisor would have
attitude.
to,
I'm like, bring it on.
oh really? Yeah, I think I gotta.
Like, I dare you. I'm like, this is my PhD project. That means that I currently know more about this topic than anybody else because I'm doing my PhD on it. And that's how PhDs work, right? You pick this like teeny tiny little niche of science and become an expert on it over the course of your PhD. So I was like, go ahead. What you got?
That's true. Oh, I was a lowly research assistant for a while, and I remember I went to the Society for Neuroscience conference, and this guy stopped by and he asked me some questions. And then, whenever people ask you a question and they talk about the quote unquote sexy research, that's such a red flag for me to like just not talk to that person. Like, even if the research is truly like sexy, I just don't want to hear people telling me about sexy research because I feel like it says something that's like different than what it's actually talking about. It's kind of sexist to call something sexy. Like, oh, have you seen the latest sexy research? Like, I just want
Yeah.
to like leave the conversation, but I just
It's
listen to this
a
guy talk, and then
it's an unnecessary adjective.
it's unnecessary. Like, I guess they could say a different adjective. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
it's just my personal pet peeve, even if it's not like truly sexist, which I believe it is sexist to just come up to some girl, young girl,
Yes.
attractive
Yes.
me, and be like, oh, have you seen this sexy research? Like, first of all, as to imply my research isn't sexy, or maybe to say my research is sexy, like, oh, your research is just sexy, that's why you're doing your research. It's like, I clearly have like a lot of issues about being a woman in science, but
No,
these are
there are
important conversations.
power dynamics that happen in science. I'm kind of still waiting for academia to have its Me Too moment, right? Because look, we've all seen things and experiencing things where this power dynamic with overwhelmingly older male PIs and heads of departments and things like that, and a what's becoming actually an overwhelmingly female graduate student population. Um, that there, yeah, things happen, and there's microaggressions and macroaggressions, and yeah, but that's a whole nother podcast, right?
Yeah, that's kind of like fancy comma is kind of, we've been writing about the sociology of science, which is kind of the way that science is structured, because we
Yeah,
have a sociologist that works with us, Kelly,
that's
and
cool.
she's been telling me about sociology, and I've been like, oh, that really relates to the way that we do science, because
Hmm.
I don't remember. I keep saying science is done for humans by humans to advance humanity. And so I've been thinking about that a lot and thinking about the role of like humans in science. And honestly, sometimes
That's
it's
good.
been really sad, but other times it's like there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah,
I
of
think
course.
reclaiming your fashion sense is a great way to subvert the hierarchies of science that may, or whatever, just
Yeah.
mix it up a bit. So finally, I think I'm going to ask you the first question that I have on here. So, what's been your journey into science communication?
Hmm. Like I said, knew I didn't want to do sort of the traditional route out of my PhD, and was thinking about going into policy. A lot of policy is communication, right? So a lot of what scientists do in the policy world is communicate science. And I figured out pretty early on in my scientific career that I'm not the best at doing the science. Like, I'm not terrible. I got a PhD. I made it through. It's fine. But I wasn't going to be like, nor did I want to have my own lab, right? So, but what I do really like is communicating science. I love to be able to watch somebody's eyes light up when they like get something. They're like, oh, that's so cool. And so that was sort of initially kind of held that with me for a long time. You know, went and worked at the FDA for a little while, went to the Gates Foundation, went to Fred Hutch, all of which had aspects of communicating the science, right? Like at the Gates Foundation, I was a program officer. I gave out money to really awesome works, but there's a lot of communication that happens in that. And then in the pandemic, like everybody did, you get kind of restless. And um, I, in particular, because of the work I was doing at the time, was fielding a lot of questions from people about the vaccines. And that was great. I was really happy to be a resource. It also was very emotionally draining. And I just needed an outlet. And I was like, I want to get back to when I was a kid and science was fun and exciting and cool and full of wonder and curiosity. And I was like, well, what fills me with that now? Like, what part of science would make me feel that now? And it really was thinking about the science behind luxury items. My first thing I did was I had a little blog and I did this post about champagne bubbles, like how the bubbles actually happen in champagne and whether or not the shape of the glass influences the bubbles. And I got so excited about it. And I was like, okay, this is telling me something. It's telling me that I need to do this, that this fills me with joy. And so then I was thinking about it. I really like writing. I still write. But, I'd been listening to podcasts for years at that point, and I was like, this is some supreme, like, I don't know how I channeled this like white dude energy. I'm like, I can do a podcast. Right? Like,
What you're saying it's not.
I
I
just
don't
get
know if it's white. It's just confident. Maybe it is like kind of like. Do you know Karen Ho on Twitter? I think for a while her Twitter name was like Sustainable White Guy Confidence or something.
mm-hmm.
Just that idea that like, oh, I'm gonna start this project and it's gonna be really successful. And I think that you see it a lot with like guys in general.
And it's
But
not a
yeah, like
knock.
the
It's not a knock on white guy. I'm married to a white guy, right? Like, it's not a knock on white guys. It's just that there is this confidence that comes with being in a position societally where you're not often told no or where you're expected to always succeed, right? And so I think there's a confidence that gets built in to that. And I think spreading some of that confidence around would be amazing.
Yeah, because I know that when I try to start anything, not only am I always just wrought with self-doubt, but then other people's expectations are either not, there's no expectation or there's too high of an expectation. It's just like, I wonder sometimes, like, I wonder if I was male and sexism wasn't real, like, would I really be successful? And I don't know if that's really a productive question to ask. But as a woman in science, you kind of like, I sort of had this like thing for myself where like I going to MIT, we always talk about sexism every day because MIT's professors, female professors, did a study on sexism and they found all this sexism. So
Yeah.
after they did that, they sort of elevated the status of women at MIT. But I sort of grew in college, I sort of was steeped in this culture of like sexism, so much so that I
Mm.
was like, well, I guess I just won't be as ambitious because if there's so much sexism, then I won't be as successful. So I think that I kind of made that like my whole life ethos of like don't try to work too hard. But then it was like, I try because I really like work life balance. Like I love running.
Yes.
So um, I can't imagine my life without that kind of stuff. But it's interesting the way that I've shaped my life around sexism. Like I sometimes I hear that girls don't do hard things and prestigious things because they're so afraid of it. But it's like for me,
Mm.
I just didn't want to put in the effort if it was just going to be a failure. So I don't know why I went into this tangent, but
No, but it's an
it's
important
just
tangent. It's so look, I'm in my 40s, so this has taken me quite some time to figure out. And I will say I probably have more just sort of like sheer ballsiness than maybe some other people. It's very much to do with my mom. She's a firecracker of a woman. So, um, however, that doesn't mean it's not a struggle, right? So I have read there's this really great book called Playing Big by Tara Moore, where she goes into like why women play small and how you can break yourself out of that. And it doesn't mean that you have to do the biggest, most ambitious thing. It's sort of what does playing big look like for you? Like, what do you want to put out in that world? And how can you do it without as much of the self-doubt and the inner criticism and all of that, because it's going to happen. I mean, every day I'm like, I'll post something on social media for a podcast and be like, oh no, does that one look good? Does that not look good? Oh, it only's gotten 3 likes. And I think with this project, what finally resonated for me was I was in a season in my life where there's a lot of things happening, and I said, this is the thing I am doing for me. I am going to do this for me. And as long as I think it's good, I don't really give a flying bleepity bleep what anybody else thinks. There's 30 people that listen to our podcast. I don't care. I still love doing it. So I think that is part of it too. It's just like, can you have something that you own that's just for you, that that you authentically think is good, and then anybody else, meh. But I'm coming at this from a place of privilege. We do this podcast as a labor of love. It's not my work. It's not how I make money. So there is a fair amount of privilege kind of wrapped up in that statement. But
Well, but sometimes I feel like I mean, it is a privilege to. It's a huge privilege to be able to do exactly what you want to do in life, and I think about that often when I wake up and I don't have to go work at a factory. I'm a citizen, all this stuff. Like I don't have to deal with the bureaucracy that comes with struggling to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So I mean, like, there's so much like I do tutoring now, so I'm kind of a minimum wage worker, but it's different because I truly get to follow my passions, and I really feel very grateful that I'm able to do that. But I guess there is a lot of privilege, but there also the flip side of that is that it's so easy to create a podcast. You can create a podcast from anywhere if you have internet connection,
super
and
easy.
I think that's kind of the amazing part about it. So maybe it's like we kind of
Yeah.
have this huge. It's a privilege, it's an honor, but it's also just like really easy and really fun to communicate, build community, share your thoughts about, especially fashion in the science world. There used to be this really good blog from my Georgetown pharmacology grad student, Hannah something. I forget her name. Hannah,
Hmm.
maybe? Hannah Bonans, whatever. She used to have a blog called Farm. It came from the Clueless movie. Where there's like the mean girls kind of people in Clueless, and they
Yeah.
make fun of this girl, and they were like, you could be a farmer in those
Yes.
clothes. And
Yeah.
then, but she's in pharmacology, so she said like a farmer, like a PH farmer. So,
Ah. Oh, I love a science pun.
yeah. So I used to read her blog, and she'd get really dressed up and blog about going to lab going to Georgetown, I guess, and now she lives in Colorado, and she thinks she did her postdoc there, and now she's in
Nice.
education, so she's not in teaching, but that sort of like the intersection of science and fashion, like there's not a lot of it, and I think part of the reason that we feel so bogged down by like privilege is because we're kind of like pushing at the boundaries of something that doesn't really exist for us. And I think, I mean, it is a huge privilege and a huge honor, but it's also something that you get so much crap just for talking about fashion in the lab, or like
Yeah.
saying anything. Like I hated getting called out, or like getting in like weird discussions about like the most asinine things because everyone just disagreed with me because I was female, or like I don't know. Like I don't have coworkers anymore, so maybe that's like a business, that's like a workplace thing. But yeah, I think more people should have fashion podcasts, and there should be less gatekeeping about fashion and style. And I think everyone in science should be paying attention to fashion, men and
Yeah.
women. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's that whole spiel that Stanley Tucci does in The Devil Wears Prada about the importance of this fashion magazine, and I don't. I'm not going to sit here and be like fashion is more important than science, but what I think the point is that science underpins everything in our life, right? Like you can't decide not to opt in to science. That's not how it works, right? So, because if you look at textile dyeing, right? That is a science. There's science behind how that dye, how that molecule is going to bind to that fabric, and whether or not it's going to stay, whether or not it's going to wear well, if it's going to fade. So I think that part of the podcast too was to really, to get people to kind of interact with science in a different way where it doesn't feel as scary, right? Like talking about a pandemic, talking about climate change feels super scary to everybody. Um, but talking about why clay hardens in a kiln, the molecular process of the clay hardening in a kiln, doesn't feel as scary. And it feels also a little bit more approachable, right? So you could have these people, the scientists talk about these huge concepts. And I think when you're in the science, it feels normal to you. And then when you step out of the science, you're like, oh, not everybody spends their time thinking about nuclear fusion reactions or whatever, science people happen to be talking about. So the podcast is a way to kind of make science a little bit more approachable and a little bit more fun, because I think that we've lost the fun, and it's become it's become sort of a dirty word almost, science, right? In sort of the politics. And I was like, no. Science, some sort of science underpins almost every single facet of your life. So let's pull it apart. Let's think about it. Let's talk about it. Let's explore. Let's discover together. Because the fun thing about the podcast is, so I am a microbiologist and my husband's an electrical engineer. So we, at any given time, we are not experts in what we're talking about. And so you get to discover kind of along with us about this science. And we have the ability as scientists to be able to decode a lot of the language and the research a little bit easier. But sometimes we struggle too. I mean, there's been a couple of episodes I've done where it's just taking me forever to wade through the literature, because I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. I just want a full sentence, and the only thing I understand is the ands and the thus.
That's me reading anything related to like quantum physics. Like,
Oh God.
it's to the point it's like, don't ask me to read about quantum physics because I will not understand a single word. Like, I've actually written about quantum physics for my clients, or I forget what I wrote it for, but it was like the intersection of chemistry and quantum physics is like the only thing I understand about physics, like molecular interactions, but or subatomic particles. That's the part that makes sense to me, but it's just like I have this mental block in my mind about physics just because it's everyone always talks about it as being so hard. I wish people talked about it like cool and approachable, like fashion. Like anyone can get into fashion. Can anyone really get into quantum physics? I'm doubtful.
Yeah, probably not. I think so. Funnily enough, I think there's going to be some physics in this our upcoming season. So we are doing our third season, and it's going to be on fashion. And I think there's going to be some physics because I think we're going to talk about pleats and ruffles and things that actually have some physics to them. So a ruffle is a very physics heavy shape.
Really? Yeah, because I grew up wearing a lot of ruffly skirt or
I mean,
pleated skirts. I had a purple pleated
pleats.
skirt that was
Pleats.
everything.
And I'm a
And
child
like
of the
leg
80s, so it
warmers.
was ruffle.
Did you wear leg
ruffles.
warmers?
Who didn't wear
Ruffles, leg warmers.
Oh yeah.
Oh my
You had to.
gosh!
You
Wow.
had to. I mean, if you watched Gem, then you had to wear the leg warmers. I mean, that was just the way that went.
Leg warmers, LA Lights shoes. Do you remember those shoes? They like lit up as you're walking.
Yes. Those are still around. My son has a pair.
They're really fun. I had a
They are very
pair,
fun.
and I don't remember what happened to them, but
Eventually they stopped lining
I
up.
had, yeah. So I think we already talked about your podcast, and that it talks about the science of luxury, the science of fashion. You've covered like designer purses, gemstones. You're going to talk about fashion, which I'm really excited about. You talked about why you started your podcast. I think so. What do you hope people take away from your podcast?
I think the first thing is that anything art is not wholly separate from anything scientific, right? There's a lot of mixing of both. Scientists are artists in their own ways, and some of them outright. I know a lot of my friends from grad school are really talented artists, and also that science is everywhere and science is fun. Science is super fun. Discovering how the world works is fascinating to me. And so I hope that people take away a little bit of that curiosity and a little bit of that wonder. I think wonder is a word we don't use a lot anymore, and it has a very particular meaning that's separate from curiosity. And so I hope that there's some wonder that people experience listening to the podcast, and a little bit of humor because it's hosted by my husband and myself. So there's some spousal disagreements in there every once in a while.
That's exciting. I didn't know that was your husband because I saw it was two people. I was like, oh, that's cool. I guess there's another PhD, but it's like Mr. Lux Sipod and you, which I would in my mind you are Lux Sipod. I'm gonna tune in to starting this season because I can't sometimes like I have so little time that I really have to know a lot about something to like listen to something for pleasure or like listen to podcasts.
It's hard. Like I used to listen on my commute, but I don't have a commute anymore.
Same. I used to run around Georgetown and listen to like podcasts, This American Life, all of the ones that
so good.
This American Life, like me, I used to run through Georgetown and listen to This American Life podcast, and I get stung by all the mosquitoes because
that's like the most
Georgetown
DC
summers
thing ever.
are so hot. It's a swamp. That whole place, when they say drain the swamp, I'm like, yeah, they better drain the swamp because it's so swampy. Like
it's
no
a
mosquitoes.
literal swamp. That's why
It's
that's why
terrible.
GW is in the neighborhood called Foggy Bottom, because it is DC was built on top of a swamp.
I
That's
didn't know
why,
that.
yeah, it's why Congress recesses in August, because August was yellow fever and malaria season. So everyone used to go back home so that they wouldn't catch yellow fever from all the mosquitoes in the swamp that was DC. And yeah,
That's unbelievable. But I mean, it all makes so much sense now.
yeah,
So much more
yeah.
sense now.
If you've experienced August in DC, you're like, of course, it was a
Oh
swamp.
God. I don't miss that. I'm sorry. Like I miss
I don't.
shopping in DC. Like how many times do I get a coffee and I'm like, I wish I was walking around Georgetown, just like thumbing through like some
Yeah,
scarves or sweaters or something,
yeah.
anything. Because Georgetown, and then like, it was the Palisades. The Palisades is where I used to live, and I guess I heard there are like a lot of Republicans there. But the most
I
iconic thing
know.
about the Palisades that I learned is like people would walk through the Palisades with like parasols, dressed up like stylishly, like a fashion
Hmm.
show was happening outside.
Yeah.
And I was really envious of that. And I never dressed that. I tried to dress that aesthetic in the Palisades, but I was broke AF because I had just left grad school. I was working like $25, freelancing for $25 an article. But um,
Yep.
I still aspire to be as stylish as the women of the Palisades. Are they still that stylish there?
I don't know. I haven't been in a bit. We're outside of the city, so I've been back to Georgetown, and it has changed a fair bit. Although the shopping is still nice there. It's got a more decidedly college slash tourist vibe than it did in the past. But DC is a city of kind of changing neighborhoods, and so uh, a lot has changed since I've been there, because it's been a decade. Can you believe it?
It's been forever, and the
It's
whole
been
vibe is
forever.
different now. Like I
Yeah.
was there during the Bush years and the Obama years, and then I came back for the Trump years. I haven't been there for the Biden years, but anytime the president changes,
Yeah.
because all the politicos come in. When
Hmm.
Obama was there, that's where I was in grad school, and then when Donald Trump was there, I was there working in the House of Representatives, and it
Yeah.
was a little bit more Republican, but still, but a lot different. And it's gone a
Yeah.
lot different over the past 10 years. I feel like it was almost like I'm nostalgic for the Georgetown of 2010 or so, or like
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
now I think if I go back to Washington, I it's not the same vibe. But
No,
I mean,
it's okay. That's what I mean. Big cities change, right? That's like people
yeah,
move in and move out. DC, especially, I think one of the things that you get used to in this area is that it's transient. Like most people are not here forever, so there's a transient population. So there's sort of a transient culture in some places, not everywhere, but yeah.
I have to go back to Washington because I literally daydream about going to Washington, getting a cup of coffee, walking down M Street. I live in Oklahoma. There's no big city vibe in Oklahoma, even in
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma City. I mean, there is a little bit of one, but it'd be
Yeah.
weird if I took a coffee and went to downtown Oklahoma City and just walked around because it's not the same because you don't pop into shops and stuff. But
Yeah.
um, I have to get in touch post pandemically with my brick. I have a love of brick and mortar shopping, which I could not
Yeah.
do in the pandemic. So
No.
um, and hopefully, your podcast is going to be about the science of fashion. So, what topics are you going to be exploring in the podcast, and why did you choose fashion as the topic for this season?
I we sort of stumbled into our topic for the first season. We started not having a specific topic, and then stumbled into jewelry, and then made a decision, because we were in Europe, to do art for the second season. Not that Europe is the exclusive place to find art, but we were sort of more surrounded by it than we were here in the States. And then fashion, I was like, well, this is part of the reason I started this podcast. I love fashion. Like, let's get into it. And I have a good friend who is a former fashion industry person, and so she might make some appearances on the podcast as well. And so yeah, and topics are going to be everything. I've been looking through the trend reports for this fall and the spring to see what's trendy. So there's going to be kind of, how do you make fabric and dye fabric, but then like the different fabrics, lace and leather, and like I said, ruffles, and might do sequins again. So yeah, just seeing kind of what's on trend, and then talking about some of the eternally timeless things, like lace. I think lace is an eternally timeless, but there's a particular way it's made. And so yeah, and part of it too is exploring the science, but also sort of the artisanship, right? So uh, I follow a couple of the couturiers, so the places where they actually make things by hand. So like, so for the whole concept with haute couture is that it's handmade and it's a very like artisanal creation. And so following some of those houses on Instagram is just amazing to see how they hand make just the most gorgeous pieces. I mean, it is an art. It's a piece of art that is this dress that just got handmade over thousands of hours. And so, yeah, tangent, but, and you know, we're always open to suggestions. So if you have a suggestion, or if anybody has a suggestion of what they'd like to learn, somebody just recently suggested sunglasses, which I thought was super cool. I don't know anything about the history of sunglasses or kind of how they work in terms of blocking the UV, and so I think that'd be fun to look into.
You've kind of given us a preview, but do you have any insights onto the science behind the pattern plaid? That's a
Yeah.
great pattern. I love plaid. Pattern mixing as well. And
Yes. Pattern
plaid is
mixing is
great
fun.
for fall. Remember when in the 2013 or so, where there was like this one plaid scarf that was everything? It was like
Yes.
Burberry almost, but it was like
The
fake
Burberry.
Burberry, and
Yes.
everyone had it. And I
Everybody
think I
had it.
got like a fake one of them. I have a bunch of 2013 fashions in storage right now, so
I
you
think
might be able
everything
to
comes
have me
back.
on your show
Yes,
about
everything
like
comes back.
2013 fashions.
um, yeah, so plaid was the reason I suggested talking about plaid was because it is fall and it is like sort of the quintessentially fall fashion, and it was one of the more interesting things that I stumbled across. It's actually was the first episode of our podcast is on plaid, and I didn't really realize this, but researchers use plaid to discover how we see. So to discover how we do pattern recognition, so researchers will take either stationary or moving plaids to try to determine how our eyes and our brain will recognize a pattern. Because our we actually use a fair amount of filters. So you think that what you're seeing is everything that you're seeing, but it's not. Your brain filters out information that we can't make any sense of when we're seeing things. And so part of how we know that is because of this research that's been done with plaids and looking at the filters that get activated with different plaid patterns in your visual cortex. So that's kind of
Pretty
cool.
cool.
Like if you are not in the visual research space, like reading the papers is quite challenging because
It's
there's
pretty
a
hard. It's very much like the psychophysics research is very like it has a lot of jargon because
mm-hmm.
psychophysics research like only do psychophysics and they have their
Yes,
own methods. It really
yes,
is. I used to do that kind of research in the audio domain, and I had to
yeah,
learn a lot of it in grad school, but
yeah.
it's tough. And so I guess this is our last question. We could talk about this. I could talk about this forever because I love fashion, but I just am obsessed with fashion. And you can't tell from how I look now, frumpy, post pandemic Shiva, but I really am a
Right.
fashionista at heart. And I'm working on bringing my fashion sense back. Like I'm finally wearing a pop of color.
Yeah.
Um, I went for a long while, kind of slogging away in the pandemic, just like waking up, drinking coffee, going face first into some cookies and working, but
Yeah,
and
I mean
drinking coffee. That's like coffee and work, worrying. But
yep.
now I'm back to my normal self of gallivanting. Sometimes mentally going shopping in Georgetown, I guess. Like I really this is really like a thing. I wonder if this is like a thing, like if I could because brick and mortar shopping in Georgetown is excellent. I prefer
Yes.
it much. I don't like paying for shipping, and I like having things immediately. So I like to go shopping in
You
stores.
just have
So
to come. Look, we have a guest
I
room.
gotta come. I'm gonna come visit
Come stay.
Georgetown, I guess, and sleep in that exact room. No, I'm just kidding. So rambling aside, who's your favorite designer? I have several. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really hard question, and I know I gave you the questions. It's still a hard question. Like right now, I really love Dior's haute couture collection. The latest one was just stunning. Very much what we were talking about in the beginning. That quiet luxury, subdued tones, very clean lines. But it's so weird because as much as I love that sort of minimalistic take on haute couture, I adore Alexander McQueen. And just the over the topness of it and kind of the punk nod. It's just super fun. And as problematic as he was, I was a fan of Karl Lagerfeld's Chanel. I don't, I'm not, I'm on the fence with Virginie, the new designer at Chanel, on the fence because like the last collection I wasn't as big of a fan of. But how about you? Do you have a favorite?
Um, well, so is Karl Lagerfeld and Chanel are different designers, but did Karl Lagerfeld do something with Chanel?
Karl
That
Lagerfeld was the face and brain and artistic soul of Chanel for a long time.
I didn't know that because there's also a Karl Lagerfeld that's separate from
Yes.
Chanel because I
Yeah,
have
he has his own
Chanel
line.
perfume.
Yeah.
Um, my favorite designers. So for me, for so I can answer this question in two different ways. One is to say that I'm obsessed with Taylor Swift right now, and I did a deep dive into all of her outfits that she has
Mm.
for her Eras tour, and there are a lot of designers that she uses. Like she has a beaded leotard that I want to say she got from, I can't remember all of the different
Mm.
designers, but they're all very well known designers and they're very well made.
Mm.
I don't know about the science of them, but they really withstand like her walking around
Yeah.
for hours and doing all her hits. So
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with her aesthetic right now, and especially her attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that a lot of designer, like a lot of, and it's so high performing. Her fashions that she chooses for
Yes.
her
Yes.
concerts. So I love those, but they're not really practical for me every day. For my everyday wear,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like everything. My taste in fashion ranges from the kind of not fancy, like shopping at like Kohl's or J Crew. J Crew is kind
Mm.
of fancy, but um, like what am I trying to say? Like Ann Taylor was my favorite store to shop at for years because
Yes. Yeah.
the business is like elegant,
Mm-hmm.
fitted, not frumpy, like for business attire.
Yeah.
And then like
Agreed.
I also like I'm trying to think of like I do have a DVF dress. Like I have this ombre dress that I really wanted to get from DVF. It was really popular in 2013 and I have it in my eBay favorites and I've had it there for like probably 10 years. It starts out like the top is white and then it goes
Yeah.
to becoming hot pink and it's
Yeah.
kind of ombre.
I would love
Because
it.
remember in 2013, ombre was like it
Oh,
and
look, I
like
love an ombre
balayage and
moment.
everything.
Love an ombre moment.
Ombre is life. So
It
I
really
have
is.
dreams of buying that dress. I mean, if I buy that dress, I will definitely update all of our you
Yes.
viewers and
Yes.
I
You have to send me
really
a picture.
I will. I it's like it's getting cheaper because you know
Yeah.
when back in the day that DVF dress was everything and I
Is it
used to
the
shop
wrap
on
one?
Rue La
The wrap
La.
dress? Or
It's not the wrap dress.
okay.
I actually did when I was in grad school. I used to go to Banana Republic. I don't know if it's still on M Street, but they had a really good clearance section.
Yes. Oh, I love
And
Banana
Kate
Republic.
Middleton, it's a great store. I bought this really nice. I used to buy the best blouses there, but they have
Yes.
wrap dresses, and Kate Middleton used to wear them, and so that was when she was like in her heyday. So she used to
Mm,
wear those, and I had one that was like blue and white floral, and I used to wear it to my internship in,
nice.
at the Potomac Institute.
Yeah.
And actually, a weird story about fashion is I used to wear one outfit to lab, and then I would jump on the metro and go to the Potomac Institute, and I would change my clothes and wear business clothes in the bathroom on the way there. Or like sometimes on the
Yeah.
metro itself, I would just
Yeah.
start changing clothes. And
Yeah.
I guess I hid this from my lab for like probably 2 or 3 months, but
Wow.
I can't think of like I also do a lot of skincare, makeup.
Mm.
I love Tatcha face creams. I like
Oh,
Marc
me too.
Jacobs. I was wearing Urban
Tasha.
Decay eyeliner, I mean lip liner, and
Yeah.
actually also eyeliner. But um, I Marc Jacobs used to make really nice lip products, but they
Mm,
recently just like sold out, and then they actually relaunched themselves. So
don't
um,
know. Yeah, they might change the formulations.
yeah,
But I mean,
so
yeah, and to be clear, like I don't actually own any designer pieces, right? So like my appreciation is from afar, right? Like I don't somehow can't justify spending that much money on a single piece of clothing. I think this is from the like poor grad student days. Just like no,
same. It's like there's no money
no.
to like buy that. Like where would I get like $8,000? Like that's probably like 4 months of stipend.
And
It
also
maybe
like
more.
yeah, and the thing is like even if I did have the money, I still don't know that I would do it because it's a lot of money to spend on like one thing. And so I do, every once in a while look at like like sites like Poshmark and Rue La La or in the thrift stores and things like that. But I think it's unlikely that I would buy like a Chanel. As much as I love the Chanel jackets, like I don't think I would buy an actual Chanel jacket.
Like the
And
tweed
I've
ones, those are really
yeah,
nice. The
they're
tweed
really
and with the
nice.
matching skirts.
Yeah, it's a super super nice look. And I realized on a trip to Paris that my feet are far too wide for Christian Louboutin shoes. It's very sad, but my feet are too
I have
big.
some knockoffs, or wait, not Louboutin, Valentino. I have some like
Oh,
knockoff Valentinos, and they're really cute, and they're
so
all in
the ones
storage.
with
Like,
the ones with the spikes, the
yeah, the
studs,
like rock
studded.
studs.
Yeah, those are cool. Yeah, yeah. No, I just my feet are too big. So,
It's like
oh well.
it's a fun challenge, like trying to adapt your like desire to look very fashionable in like
Hmm.
by buying like knockoffs, but not like knockoffs, just like affordable versions that
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
maybe aren't like, because I like Valentinos, but I like my version better because I think they look better. Like
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. I prefer, but I also I like high performing things that are stylish looking and
Hmm.
also can get the job done. Like in terms
Yeah.
of like for like workout clothes, I always like to work out in something stylish, not
Yeah.
something that's just like frumpy. Because I feel like style is a way to express yourself, and I really
And to
I enjoy
motivate you.
expressing myself like that.
Yeah, and also it could be motivation. It can make you feel good. You know, I used to wear suits and heels and stuff to the conferences as armor. Like it made me feel good about myself. So I was like, I mean, I wore blue leopard print shoes to my PhD defense because
That
it
is
made me feel
awesome.
good.
That rules.
Yeah, if it makes you feel good, right?
Yeah, I remember. I mean, in Congress, yeah, like it's like those little things. Like I would wear, I was working and I wore a red, it was like a bright red shirt one day because I wanted
Mm,
to feel confident, and red is a
yeah,
power color for women.
yeah.
So that and like a red lip. I had I forget what brand it is, but there's like a 24-hour lip product that I would just wear, and then I
Yeah.
do my a little tiny wishbone necklace, and then my Ann Taylor pants or my little suit, and wearing um, green soled Adidas Marathon 10s, like green sneakers, because I
Mm,
was running up and down the stairs, and I
yeah.
got away with it because I was constantly shuttling around everywhere. But little things like that you
Yeah.
do that are stylish are really good to boost your confidence. And
Hmm.
I feel like if I did that in science, not to harp on make like
Yeah.
throw too much shade at scientists, but they would definitely look at me and be like, why are you wearing that or something? And then just like don't want to explain because I like to wear this. I don't know. But I did make some really weird fashion choices in lab. Like one day I wore like platform sandals and like bell bottoms because I just had these bell bottoms and they were too
Oh,
long. So I wore platform sandals. So that was like a faux pas that I made. But
yeah.
other than that, I think for the most part, I experimented a lot as a scientist. Then when I got to the policy world, I had already done my experimentation in the lab. So
Where you should do it, right? All good experimentation
yeah,
belongs in a lab.
right. Fashion or otherwise.
Fashion or otherwise,
Uh,
yeah.
so it's been a pleasure having you on. This has definitely been like a longer interview, but it's been amazing to
It
chat
was super
about two of my
fun.
favorite things. We should do this again sometime.
Yes, absolutely. And please let me know if
Uh,
you're in DC. We
yeah,
can
I'll
go
let you know if
shopping.
I decide to make my Georgetown dreams a reality.